technical. I got to learn to tell my stories a little quicker if they need to be told quicker. And in some cases, I got to learn to make them go longer if that's what people need to be. Because if you get to the point too quick sometimes, people aren't going to be ready for it. So what I'm getting with Pathway to Success, though, is this. If you are going to self-direct your growth, your personal growth, there may be 3 or 4, 5, 6, I don't know, things that you've got to do. One is education could be one of the primary things that you've got to realize. If I want to do that, I've got to get more education in that area. Experience is another one. If I want to do that, I don't have any experience. I can't expect to succeed in doing that just because I want to do it if I'm not experienced at all. So I may have to be an understudy, get a job, work somewhere where I can get experience on that exact thing. And then a third thing you may have to do is you may have to carefully plan the money that it's going to cost to be able to achieve your goal. And when you start planning your money, you may have to say, you know what, I need $10,000 to do what I want to do, and I only have $2,000 saved right now. So before I just start it and get my license to go do that business, I better carefully plan the right time to start the business when I have the right money. It's called capital savings to invest reserve funds. So the title of this episode is Budgeting Successfully to Reach Your Goals. Last week, my main thing was talking about income and stabilizing your income. You will never be able to successfully operate your budget if you don't have any money coming in to monitor. And so do your budget before you have the money so you'll know how much you need. But today we're a little bit more on to how you spend your money once you start having your money come in. And if you learn to do it in a cash flow, like a running bank balance of how the money comes in and goes out, it'll be very, very effective for you. And the reason is that when you see it on paper, you'll be able to say, whoa, I'm not going to have enough next week to meet this obligation. I better not spend this. One of the things that I do when I teach my curriculum in places is I do a 6-month, I have the students do a 6-month cash flow budget where they get a list of things. This is how much your rent's going to be. This is how much your utility's going to be. And we put out a whole lot of different variables that are going to be part of their budget. And they learn to do 6 months into the future. Now, I've got one in my workbook that I pass out. And what it is it's this married couple. They both work, and I think the husband has a second part-time job, and so it's got their whole budget laid out there. And they are barely keeping their head above water. They're saving a little bit, but not very much, but they're basically keeping things moving forward. And as you look into the future after they do the exercise, it shows that they're not going to have enough money every now and then to do what they have to do. And so when you look at a budget like that and you see that it's in the negative, if you're doing it on a computer that has color, the negative might show up as red, or it might have a bracket around it or a minus in front of it. But you see that you're basically as if you're overdrawn with a bank account where your future projections show that you're not going to have enough money to meet your obligations then. And the further in advance that you can recognize that, the better it is for you to be able to find ways to either cut back on some expenses or to be able to try to find a way to get some extra money coming in. And so in the example that I give in my workbook, I always go to March 1st, and I use couple A and couple B. Couple A never writes anything down. They're just living the best they can. They got about enough money to get through everything, but they don't have any extra money to speak of, very little, and they have to be very, very tightly managing what they do. Well, couple B, they do it on paper. They use the Steve Copeland cash flow budget method, and they can see what the future is going to look like very accurately. So on March the 1st, husband comes home and he says to his wife, he says, honey, you know, we got $1,400 in the bank, and we've been really killing ourselves, having it hard for the last couple months. Let's take a long weekend and go to New York and see a Yankee game, a Broadway show, and just stay in a hotel. We can stay on the Jersey side because it'll be a lot less expensive, and we can get it all. So let's budget $700, or he doesn't say budget because he doesn't know the word. He says, let's take $700 of this money that we got, and let's go to New York. Okay? So they do. And when they get back, they don't have any money to pay their bills for the next 3 weeks. They're playing catch-up ball. They're behind. The couple that keeps an ongoing budget, when the husband says the exact same thing, she says, oh, honey, that's a great idea. Let's do that. He says, well, let me go upstairs and look at the finances for a little while, and I'll come back down. About an hour later, he comes down, and when he saw it, he realized that he's not going to have enough money to pull out $700 and still meet all the obligations for the next month or so, and because it just puts him behind because they weren't that far ahead. So he comes down basically with the proverbial tail between his legs, and he says, sweetheart, I'm sorry, but I misspoke. I looked at the budget, and if we do that, we're not going to have enough money to pay all the bills that we got coming in. The reason that the first couple thought they had enough was because $800 was going to be rent the next week, or it was due that week. They usually paid it on about the 6th or the 7th. In other words, he had cash in his hand, but he wasn't thinking about how to use that cash. It's the same example as the story that I talked about the construction worker that got his $175 paycheck and forgot to pay his utility bill that was going to get cut off on Monday and spent too much money over the weekend. That's in my personal finance and small business ownership seminar. It's on the website, rightthink.org, and it's on page, I think it's on page 32, I'm not sure, but it's the secret to personal finance. The point is, if you're keeping track of it and you see it on paper and you're monitoring what you're doing carefully, you're not going to spend money you don't have, and you'll come out much better. I just want to back up just for a second and talk about a couple things here. I'm talking about the pathway to success. I really want to stay on that for a minute. Everybody that I know, for the most part, would rather have control over themselves, their own life, their own destiny, their own direction, than have somebody constantly telling them what they got to do. So what I'm getting at is, if you take control of your life and you get focused on what it is that your goals are. Hey, when I said I was going to talk about budgeting successfully to reach your goals, it was kind of like a trick title. I'm not going to give you, because that's not what you want. You might think you do, but I don't think you do. I'm not going to give you like this wonderful printout that tells you if you put in this here, put in this, fill in this blank, you'll have your budget done. That kind of budget does not work for people that don't know what they really want to do and aren't willing to have the discipline to stay on it. And so there are literally thousands of budget classes out there, budget materials, fill in the blank budgets. But I've learned in my life that unless you have a real personal feeling for what's going on and understand it, just seeing it on paper that somebody else helped you write it down without you living and breathing it, it's not really going to help you. My budget class, most budget classes are two parts. All budget books always have these two parts, and some have many, many more. One of them is why you need to put a budget down on paper. And then the second part is, let's get it down on paper. Well, mine goes a whole lot further. It's the same first two. Then the third step is, mine's a 10 step, taking responsibility for yourself. Act like we're all self-employed and that, the buck stops here. I got to understand where the money's coming from. The fourth step of proper budgeting is honoring your commitments, living up to your word, looking to see if you're going to have enough money to pay everybody you're supposed to pay, and wanting to pay everybody you're supposed to pay, and feeling like that's my goal, is to make sure I honor my commitments. Use the budget as a living tool. It's a day in, day out process, and the more you do it, the easier it gets to keep track of it. You don't have to look at it every single day. You'll start to really understand. It's learn your own spending habits, your own behavior. You can use your budget to help rebuild your credit. Once you get your budget down, you'll understand better ways to spend your money. You use your budget to stick to the plan. Live within your means. That is so important, to understand what it means to live within your means and to focus on how much I have to work with. And if I can't really afford to live this way, I've got to cut back. And you can cut back, you can increase your income, a combination of the two. And then this is where it gets really nice. If you've gone through using your budget in those first 7 steps that I just said, the joy of reducing the pressure, you will start to experience that now that I'm starting to get on top of it, now that I'm paying attention to these things, my life is getting less stressful. That is so wonderful. And then once you get like that and you start realizing that you can control your own behavior and not spend money on things that you don't need, at that point, now you can start making some real plans and get some real goals out there and set some real higher level things that you would like to do with your life. Now that you're past going to the food kitchen and not having a place to live on a regular basis. Once you become more stable and your life gets easier and cleaner and you're having all the things that we all need, like being able to afford proper dental care and being able to take care of your teeth and your health and so forth, it's wonderful. Then you can start living up to your potential. Say, you know what? I always wanted to do that, and for the first time in my life, I think I got a shot at getting there. When all these things are happening and you're controlling your own life that well, that is when you're going to experience a very high level of self-esteem. So that's a beautiful thing. So with that, I just want to tell you, I kind of got like 5 steps here. The goal is to go through whatever changes you need to make so that you become more stable. And then once you get stabilized, you start working your way up the higher ladder. You get stable, and then you get a little more. And ultimately, you're doing more for other people. Other people enjoy your company, and you're networking with people. You're connecting. You're helping to make the world a better place. You're not just on the receiving end. So I wrote this down. Let me see if it makes any sense. So these are like 5 steps to this here. Once you accept that nothing is impossible, 2, and when you make up your mind that you want to change, that you don't want to be like that anymore, where it's just hand to mouth and struggling all the time. When you get disciplined and focused, and then when you learn to stay on a tight budget, you'll start to get stable. You're not spending money on things that you don't need, and you use your budgeting as a living tool. Those things will help you move yourself up, and you'll feel better about yourself. I want to tell you something here that I think is really interesting. So my father is 93. He'll be 94 in August, and 3 weeks ago tomorrow, I think it's 4 weeks ago tomorrow, he had a heart attack. And one thing about my dad, he's a fighter. He's a healer. He knows how to get himself better. He's doing very, very well. He got out of intensive care after just a couple of days. He went out of a hospital into a rehab center. And on Thursday, he's going to go back home. and we're going to have live in